And this is Annie Cumming, and we are two PTs on staff with North Shore University Health System, and it feels so strange to do this and not be able to see your faces. But I've been doing this presentation off and on for years, and we're here really to talk you through. There are only two participants, so we might be a little less formal than we usually are. I work at a fitness center in Buffalo Grove, and Annie is in Skokie, and we both specialize in women's health. And I will let Annie kind of take over from here.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, so thank you. And if Kimberly or Mary, if you guys, I mean, we could make this super interactive. If you want to, you could definitely ask us any questions or tell us a little bit about why you're here or goals for this. I mean, we could just kind of go through it, whatever you guys are comfortable with. But it's always nice to have that opportunity to, when there's only a few people.
Yeah, I can let you know. So my name's Mary Ellen. Hello.
Hi.
I am in my second trimester with my first pregnancy. So I've been told, I'll want to see a PT after labor, but I wanted to know, I guess, what I should be doing in the meantime, and then if I should see a PT before labor as well.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I don't have any existing condition or any pain or anything at the moment, but I just want to know what I can do to feel my best the whole time.
Totally. That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's I mean, I'm always advocating for people to get in and see a PT while they're pregnant, if not to kind of check out how you can optimize pregnancy. You can also do things to prep for labor and delivery. So depending on kind of your goals for what style of labor and delivery you want to have, there's lots of movements and things that can keep labor progressing. But definitely, like you said, postpartum, your body just goes through so many changes, so drastically in such a short period of time. So it's always nice to have that relationship set up, even if you come in and you did a check-in once a month during pregnancy with a physical therapist. The patients that I work with are across the spectrum of having no symptoms and wanting to just prevent things to addressing things as they come on. So I think that's awesome. Yeah.
Do people usually come in the third trimester, or they come in the second if they're not experiencing any pain right now? So
yeah, I see people starting in the first trimester. I mean, all the way through coming in at the second. I think one thing that I don't know, Anne, if you have stuff to say about this too, but one thing that I notice is when I get patients who are into their third trimester and they've been having pain for a little bit of time, the pregnancy changes are so drastic that sometimes things can be kind of hard to keep up with. If it's started at 35 weeks, it takes somewhere between 8 and 12 weeks to build muscle strength. And a lot of what happens is you're trying to create stability in your body as you kind of get looser. Right? In the slide, we can see increased joint laxity is a big one, which is really natural, really great. But I think that continuing the exercises that you're doing that are supportive for you, just staying as active as you can is also really good. So it really is really individual. There isn't just one time that I see people in the pregnant period. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add to that, Anne.
I would agree. I, for years, actually taught a prenatal exercise program through North Shore. And it was so nice because people would come in and you could teach them things to do proactively. Unfortunately, if you're billing insurance, and insurance doesn't always want to pay for proactive, unfortunately. But most people would benefit from, even like Annie said, even a few visits.
Okay, great. Thank you.
How about you, Kimberly?
I'm 24 weeks along in my first pregnancy.
Congrats.
No, thank you. No major problems so far. So far, so good.
That's great. Cool. Well, I'm really glad you guys are both here.
So why don't we, I think what Andy and I were talking about is kind of going through the information, and then maybe as we go through the information, you'll have some questions. And since for both of you, it's your first pregnancy, we can give you some general information, prenatal, postnatal, and then we thought that we would save 15 minutes at the end and just take you through some very simple, very appropriate exercises that we like many women to do during pregnancy. So how does that sound?
Sounds good.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, and please interrupt and ask questions if you want more explanation or anything. So yeah, just kind of going a little bit more into like physical changes. There's so many changes that are occurring so rapidly, as you both have probably experienced. But you're really getting some hormonal changes that are increasing joint laxity, especially through the pelvis. So you're becoming a lot more mobile, which is going to be helpful for a baby to descend through that pelvic outlet. Along with that becomes a lot of our muscles start to relax. So we've got progesterone going through our system. So that's going to slow down like a venous return. We have slowed colon motility. So you might start to notice, like constipation. And being a pelvic health therapist, like you want to really kind of prevent bearing down, prevent hemorrhoids, kind of keep with that venous return. You're getting a lot of blood pooling kind of through that anal area, especially in pregnancy, but also just getting swelling in the ankles and the feet. So noticing that some people benefit from like compression stockings or just pumping their feet throughout the day. And like that, is even going to be something that you start to notice maybe from sit to stand, or maybe you already have shortness of breath. A big one that's pretty popular or kind of like in the media a lot is diastasis recti. So I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail, but that is basically a separation that occurs between your left and your right rectus muscles. And those muscles are the like six-pack muscles that go down the abdominal wall. Obviously, as your baby is growing, your center of gravity is going to change. So you're going to be having to carry a lot more load anteriorly. And with that, we notice that the compensation patterns change. And that can impact anything in your whole kinetic chain, from where you're holding your head to in between the shoulder blades to your low back. So we'll touch on that a little bit, some of that proprioceptive feedback when Anne does a little bit of the exercises at the end. So, some pelvic tilts and things to kind of connect with. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see these images of the diastasis. And that's just that separation that I was talking about. And it can be anywhere. So it can be above, below, or at the belly button, and it can stretch. It can be the whole length of the abdomen. But I think what's important to look at in this picture is that there's this misinformation that it's just like a kind of hole. It's a very scary thing. But the more that we're learning about it, our diagnostic tools have really improved over the last 5 years or so. So now we're using real-time ultrasound to really assess the tissue and see what's going on at that level. And so we're treating it differently. And we see now that it is natural. It is very natural to have this in your third trimester. I'm in my third trimester with my second, and I 100% have a diastasis. And that is to be expected because your abdominal wall muscles can only stretch so far. And you need a little bit more room. So that separation starts to occur. And what is living there in that tissue is it's like a little tendinous structure, and it's called the linea alba. And pre-pregnancy, it might just be a very narrow vertical strip. But in pregnancy, or for people who have like maybe like heavy weightlifters, someone who has gained a lot of weight in the abdomen, like it can be different reasons, but you start to get that separation. So, we used to think that it was like, it caused back pain. it contributed to pelvic floor dysfunction and leakage. And there's just like a lot of fear around what you need to do to fix the gap. But again, like as we're learning more and more, we're understanding that it's really not about fixing the gap. Based on your connective tissue, based on your genetics, what you do for not a living, but what you do in your daily activities, your gap may or may not come back together. And that's totally fine, but we do want to help you manage your intra-abdominal pressure so that you feel strong. The biggest thing is functionally, can you like pick your kids? Do you feel like you can do what you want to do in your life? And so if you have a diastasis, we'll, still measure it as physical therapists so that it's something that you're aware of so that you can start to really like rehab the core area, because it does impact load transfer between the left and the right side of the abdomen. And that enhances stability through the pelvic girdle, through the low back. But we're kind of learning more and more that it's pretty natural. So I know there's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet still, just because our evidence has changed so drastically in the last 5 years, and not all of the people who are giving this information are up to date. And there's a lot of outdated stuff. There's a lot of fear, perpetuated, and myths. But I think that that's important to know going into it, because you might have one, you might come out with one, and it's okay. Do you have any questions about that?
No.
Yeah. Okay, so pelvic floor muscles are the base of the pelvis. So I've got my little pelvis here, and you can see in a couple of these pictures, right, you've got your spine that comes right into the pelvis, and like here's growing baby right here. And then if you flip the pelvis upside down, you're going to see this red is all pelvic floor muscles. So, in the picture on the left-hand side, that's kind of looking up at someone's pelvic floor. And the top part of that image where the spine is, that comes down into like the tailbone. Yeah, exactly. So in the back, you've got like the anal sphincters. And so like if I look at my back here, here's my anal sphincter. And then in front of that is that perineal body. And then in front of that is the vaginal opening. And then right in front of that is your urethra. And then right in front of that is the clitoris. And there's a couple layers of muscles here. And basically they work together as a team. So when you do a Kegel, you're contracting those muscles. And a Kegel has two motions. It's got this kind of closing motion. So it's like as if you were going to think about gripping a tampon with the vaginal opening. So you're kind of tightening it, but it's also tightening anally, and it's tightening around the urethra. And then you take that grip and it's like you're lifting it up and into your body. So it's like an elevator coming up, and that's that deeper layer of muscle coming up and in. So continence, right? So you don't want to be leaking urine or feces or and you also want to be able to evacuate completely. So the pelvic floor muscles need to really release and come back down to make sure that you're not retaining any urine, retaining stool, constipation, pain with intercourse, things like that. It stabilizes from the hips into the pelvis, into the low back. So the pelvic floor orthopedically kind of acts like a spring. So every step you take, if you're exercising or walking or lifting or something like that, it's a really integral part of your core. And then it also has a role in respiration. So if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, that one, you can see that the diaphragm is like a little dome at the top. And then the pelvic floor is basically a mirror image of the diaphragm, and they act like a piston. So when you take this nice big belly breath, which I know baby's blocking a little bit, but if you were to think about getting that breath down past the chest into the belly, you'll notice that your belly expands, and you may or may not be as aware that your pelvic floor descends, opens, and kind of stretches. So if you start to practice breathing in that way, you're going to be automatically, naturally recruiting your core muscles. And that's why we tend to cue women to exhale with exertion, because if you're starting that breath out, your pelvic floor is naturally starting to contract, and so is your abdominal wall. So now I would say is a great time to start that process of if you're lifting something, if you're slowing down your exercise routine and being a little bit more mindful about your movements, think about exhaling during exertion. And we can put that into some of the exercises to practice at the end. And that's going to be so important postpartum as well. Whether you end up having a vaginal delivery or a cesarean delivery, getting coordination through the abdominal wall and the pelvic floor is really, really important. And you can see the top picture. I just wanted to kind of show you guys so you know men have pelvic floors too, right? The only difference is that prostate, and then, you know, they don't have the vaginal opening kind of coming through that pelvic floor. Often people will have like a tear in the pelvic floor following, especially like a first delivery. So that can go back, first degree tear. And it's great to know what kind of tear you have. So the first degree tear is going to just kind of go through that vaginal kind of tissue. Second degree is going to go down into the perineal body. Third is through the external anal sphincter, and fourth is through the internal. And I think up to a second degree is really, really common, but that does involve the muscle. So it's important, again, to kind of like know how to rehab that. And we can talk about that too. But the pelvic floor muscles, I could go on forever. They stretch to like 5 times their resting length. And so super important, you know, to kind of like work on your Kegels, feel the breathing into that area. Like if you do yoga, that's great to continue through pregnancy, to make sure that like, as you get closer and closer to laboring and delivering, that you're aware between like pushing versus opening, right? Versus contracting. A lot of times we'll see women postpartum who just had chronic constipation, had like a lack of coordination in their pelvic floor. So when it came time for pushing, you know, they were inadvertently contracting their pelvic floor, and it just can lead to a lot of maternal exhaustion. So prepping with that is also a great thing to do postpartum. In pregnancy. So moving on to exercises in pregnancy. So, you know, it's really important to keep up doing, probably as your OB has guided you in, or your doctors, just like practicing what you were practicing before as you feel like you're able to. Definitely like second trimester can be an easier time to come back in and kind of keep up with what you were doing pre-pregnancy. But in general, like really making sure that you're getting around 150 minutes of that moderate intensity aerobic activity. And that is shown to improve outcomes postpartum, but also in labor and delivery. So there's so many benefits to both you and your baby just to stay active. And that can be just like brisk walks. You know, the test that they have is basically, can you carry on a conversation when you're exercising? And that's kind of like your gauge. So I think, you know, on the third bullet point, there's just kind of a number of exercise examples. You can be doing anything. Usually, you know, kind of like keeping things to being like potentially lower impact if you were lower impact pre-pregnancy. Or maybe low impact isn't the right word. And by impact, I don't mean like not running, because like if you're running, that's great, keep running. I think a lot of OBs will recommend that you're not horseback riding or skiing or something like that, where you would be in danger of like a fall and that kind of an impact. And then definitely thinking about what to look for that would be red flags if you are having any of these signs when you're exercising. You know, some of the bigger, more obvious ones might be spotting or cramping, things that you might notice right off the bat. But also, you know, like shortness of breath before you really start to exert yourself. And as your circulation changes and your body changes, you're going to notice that your endurance changes. And so you're just trying to really keep up with that and keep in tune with your body and where you're at right now, not where you were at pre-pregnancy. So absolute contraindications, which, you know, if these are things that you're dealing with, you're going to be very aware of them. Your OB is going to give you a lot of things that you potentially can't do. There's potential to be on bed rest. But But just, to reiterate, these are activities like scuba diving, or the high contact activities is what I was trying to say. But other things that you just kind of like want to watch out and not really exercise with. And precautions. So kind of like yellow light, not absolute contraindications, but as your pregnancy progresses, the baby's getting bigger. So like maybe around 18 weeks, around there, there's a recommendation to really like try not to lay on your back quite as much, especially with intentional exercises. There's venous hypotension. So baby will put pressure onto the large veins in your back. So like your vena cava, and that could limit blood flow to the baby. Now, usually it's something that, if you wake up in the night and you're lying on your back, like you're going to feel symptoms before the baby is affected. But there's a lot of modifications you can make to exercises that don't need to be done on your back. So in pregnancy, we can just have you on your side or hands and knees and whatnot. So I tend to avoid positioning patients on their back during the later stages, or, after 18 weeks of pregnancy. Anemia, like that just kind of goes to, getting really short of breath, not having enough oxygen. The Borg scale, that's a little bit of like that. Can you keep talking? And I'll look at the next page, because you want to be around, I think, a number 14. So, when you're gauging how much you're exerting, if you look on this left-hand side down on the numbers, 14 is like a little around somewhat hard to hard. And so again, maybe you're able to keep a conversation. You have that check-in with yourself that you should be able to talk. And that's really what guides us with the output with pregnancy and exercise. And then of course, drinking plenty of water. You don't want to get dehydrated. Sometimes, maybe you're experiencing this or have, especially like when you get dehydrated, you're prone to having some Braxton Hicks contractions. So that can just feel like really intense tightening across your stomach. And so sometimes that's just like the dehydration is talking to you. So making sure that you're drinking before you exercise and staying hydrated throughout exercise. And of course, avoiding low blood sugar. So some of that is just like common sense. You got to kind of like just treat yourself when you're pregnant.
So I'll take over from here. Back in the day when I was doing a lot of prenatal exercise classes, I would always tell women, have a little snack before you do your significant exercise. And the same thing with drinking plenty of fluids. Your blood volume is significantly higher. You have a lot more blood when you're pregnant. It's your way of being able to oxygenate your baby. So you need to drink plenty, and you need to make sure that that blood sugar stays up. You just won't feel good, and it won't be pleasant. So as physical therapists, we obviously treat people that have discomfort during pregnancy, as well as postpartum. Some of the things that we see can be directly related to those postural changes that we talked about earlier. So let me see if I can see myself. I don't know if I can see myself, because then I can kind of, so not all of the changes, but many of the changes that lead to discomfort have to do with those postural changes and those hormonal changes. So I always like to show people that if you think about a pregnant body, right, it's normal as your baby's growing and your center of gravity is coming forward, right? We tend to get, more of this curve that is a naturally occurring curve in our low back. It tends to become accentuated. And as a result, we have to work our calves harder to keep ourselves from falling forward. And then also with that often comes kind of a more forwardness here. Our breasts get larger, our head tends to come forward, and all those things can lead to certain discomforts. So that can add to low back pain if you've had a history in the past, upper back pain as your breasts get larger, or if you're compensating from that postural change, that can kind of make those nerves in your hands a little more irritable. We as therapists talk about if your nerves that come out of your neck and come down through here also go into your hand, if you sleep, especially like this, all cuddled up, and then you're kind of forward through here, that can lead to some of those carpal tunnel symptoms. A lot of times it's just as simple as trying to train yourself out of sleeping like this, or some women benefit from just using a very simple, easy over-the-counter wrist brace. Sometimes it's just as simple as working on improved posture, and there are many very simple exercises that you can do, and also so good to do for preparing to carry and feed a baby, whether you're breastfeeding or not. And then I had described it as pelvic pain. So we, just as Annie was showing the pelvis, so right back in through here, your pelvis is a ring. So right through here, here's your sacrum, here's what's called your ilium, your other ilium, and right in here is that joint. And because it's a ring, it's natural for your body to slowly, as those ligaments get loose, they'll open up a bit, and that can make it shift a little more frequently. And so things such as a lot of jumping or a lot of stepping up a very high step, say into a really high SUV that doesn't have a running board, or if you had a puppy, I've had patients before that they have puppies and they step over a baby gate if they keep the puppy in a caged area, or if you have a toddler and you're keeping the toddler in an area to be safe. So those are just things to watch for in terms of the SI joint or the upper back pain. There is a higher correlation with low back pain during pregnancy if you've had low back pain previously. Those are some of the more common things. Sometimes just a calf tightness, just because we're shifting our body weight forward. So just, there are some simple things that we can do for that. And as PTs, we do work on these things. So, simple exercises and posture modifications. And then if, as I think it was Mary Ellen that you were, actually, maybe it wasn't Mary Ellen, it was probably Kimberly, I think, that you were talking about PT. So in general, although you don't need a prescription to have physical therapy in the state of Illinois, usually insurance companies prefer that you have a prescription. You can also self-refer, go to a physical therapist like Annie or myself, or there are other ones in the North Shore system as well, that they specialize in treating pregnant women and postpartum women. So, we have our numbers at the end if that's something that you need or want. So then I can't remember, Annie, are you taking over with physical changes postpartum? Is this you or me? Oh, you're muted.
Thanks.
I can't hear you.
So physical changes postpartum. So definitely, depending on your delivery method, you might have some local acute healing to do through the perineal region, through the pelvic floor, if it was vaginal. Even if you don't have like a traumatic tear, meaning you don't need stitches, the pelvic floor is often going to have a lot of like micro tears through it because it just stretches so excessively. Cesarean, right? So if you have that transverse scar, that's something that is going to take some time to heal. And for both, you're actually wanting to do scar tissue massage, but you want to definitely wait until that initial healing period is you're good to go. And that's usually around 6 weeks. And you will have returned to your provider to ensure that you don't have granulation tissue or you're not healing well, and there'll be signs that you'll be looking for. But keeping in mind, like no matter what kind of scar you have, it's really good to get to know it. I know it can be really scary, especially like those, both can be, but I think I see a lot of people who have a lot of fear on the cesarean scars. So look at it, desensitize it. It might be something to start with, like a little cotton ball over that tissue, because those nerve endings are just like really hyper alert. They're sensitized. And so you want to start doing little gentle tensioning to help that tissue eventually stretch a little bit, move a little bit with your body better. You're also in those first 6 weeks or so avoiding overexertion. It's like a balloon has basically popped. Everything was really stretched out to accommodate for that full term baby. And now it's different. And so relearning coordination, intra-abdominal pressure, like we talked about, exhale on exertion, those are really important. Also increased breast tissue mass. So like Anne was talking about and showing those postural changes, a lot of what can happen at our upper back is like this kind of hunched forward position. And that can come because partially we have that increased weight in the front. And then also you're just holding stuff here, right? You're holding a baby, you're protecting your body. And so that can be an area that there's a lot of discomfort in the spine in that region. Okay, so biomechanics, thinking about now also what you can do. There's a lot of carryover into the postpartum period because your responsibilities are going to be very different potentially, especially because you guys are first time mamas. But neutral spine, lifting from your legs, and symmetry is great to start practicing now. The more you can get this stuff into your motor memory, the easier it's going to be postpartum when you have a little being to care for. But a lot of these pictures that we're going to show, the kind of intention within each one is going to be, how can you get that baby to your body instead of taking your body to the baby? So I think you can go ahead and, yep. So feeding. And so this specifically shows nursing, but if you're not nursing, the same thing is going to be for bottle feeding. So the green on the left-hand side would be a better position for you, more sustainable. So you can see that she's elevated that baby onto the pillow, allowing her body to be a lot more upright for her spine. Her head is able to be back. So it's just easier to hold on to that through a feeding. Versus like these chronic patterns that can occur on the right-hand side, which is like breast to baby, coming down to baby. Also, just to kind of say, even the best posture, holding it for a really long time is not great. And I know that it's not always accessible to have these perfect postures. So we just like do our best. And if you start to notice discomfort, if you start to notice pain in your body, that's also a really great reminder that it's time to modify or be a little bit more aware of how you're posturing yourself potentially. So carrying, I think that picture on the right is so funny because it's such a little baby. She has like thrown on her hip. But basically what it's trying to show you is like creating a little bit of symmetry. You think about like kind of the lever arm, and the further baby is out away from you, the heavier baby is, right? The asymmetry that she has with baby on her right hip causes her to pop her hip out to create a little bit of a shelf. And so if you think of the mechanics of that at her spine, she's in a little bit of a constant side bend. We call that like mall girl stance with that hip kind of popped out. If you're doing that for a few minutes and you're able to do both sides, that's actually fine. But often we get into these patterns where we're always holding on one side and then our body starts to talk to us. So holding baby as centrally as you can. And then, lifting and lowering is a really tough one. So I wanted to include these pictures, but, it's also really hard. I think that the left-hand side, the crib, the mattress is elevated, which you can do in those early months before baby's like standing. So that's the idea of like bringing baby up to you so that you don't have to bend down so far as a loaded spine, like with the weight of the baby. She also, I think on the right-hand side is demonstrating a little bit more of like bending from her back instead of bending from her hips and her knees. So I don't know that this is like necessary, but let me try to show you as I can. So if you're bending from your back, your legs are pretty locked out and you're kind of just here, right? So you can see this big curve in my back. And then obviously it's more of a squat. So I'm coming down as far as I was, but now the hinge is at my hips and it's at my knees. wide base of support. And this is way more accessible for these core muscles and the space in between your shoulder blades. But it might not be every lift, and that's cool too. Car seat's a big one, right? Like get in the car if you can. You know, like I think with new babies, it is so much easier to take that car seat out and carry it. But if you can, take baby out instead of the car seat, because there is just like no good way to carry that car seat on one side versus the other. It's just such a big thing to lug around. So one, if you can take your body in there and get as close as you can to baby, or also when you're getting baby out of the car, just kind of think about getting baby alone and like maybe your partner, or you just don't need to have that car seat. You can leave that car seat in the car. And then bathing, what can you do to either bring baby up? You know, a lot of times people will use a sink or something to get baby up to their level so they can stand. So that's always an option to consider if that is available for you. And then if not, like getting down either in the tub with your kid, or like she is on the left-hand side kneeling. You know, you don't want to be what she's doing on that right-hand side. That does not look comfortable. So again, bending from her back. And then again, you know, I just want to reiterate, like, it's definitely like what you're doing more habitually, more chronically, that starts to become an issue. And so if you're intentional about making some of these modifications, the few times that you're you know, reacting and responding naturally as you would to throw baby on your hip, if you need to get and run out the door, that's not going to be what matters as much as it is if you're always holding baby on that right side. Baby carriers there's so many out there, and there can be a really great way to keep baby like close to chest, get your arms free, get you to think about your pelvic tilt, your posture, everything up the spine. You know, things that you want to kind of look for is that you have like a nice strong waist strap that tightens around the top of your pelvis, around the midsection of your waist, to give you some good support. You want to get baby's hips flexed up into that M position. And I know this is like down the line, so I won't like spend too much time talking about this, but it helps for development of the hips if they can have that kind of flexed position. Having support across your upper back so that you're not compensating to hold the weight of baby. It's really secure. Baby's really secure on you. Often baby has to be a little higher. There's this little like kiss test. Can you tuck your chin and just kiss the top of baby's head? That's about the height that you want baby to be at. And yeah, there's a lot of options out there. So when they have better neck control, babies can turn forward, and I think they have to be able, I don't know if that's 3 months or something, but there's definitely recommendations from your pediatrician for that. So, so returning to exercise postpartum has, you know, we go back to CROB around 6 weeks to get clearance to return to intercourse and sex. And often it's just like, yep, you're good to go. Go ahead and do it. And that can be really scary because it just can. So when we think about returning to exercise at that 6-week point, we think about what were you doing during those 9 months of pregnancy, because that's a really long time. Were you up to the level that you want to return to pre-pregnancy? Are you starting something new? And so really we talk about in seeing women postpartum, we want the first 3 months to be pretty low impact. So you are doing things like loading your body, getting stronger. You can totally be using weights and doing walks and stuff like that, but not high impact. And that's because your body has just changed so drastically. Starting around 3 months, we start to load into a little bit higher impact depending on what your goals are. but it's really evidence-based at that postpartum time, like Mary Ellen, you had mentioned, to see a pelvic floor therapist. No matter your method of delivery, your pelvic floor is going to be involved, whether you had a cesarean section or a vaginal delivery. And your core muscles are so important for you to get back into coordination with. So getting assessed and making sure that you've got an awareness of like what strength you need to work on through that area, what kind of endurance and what kind of coordination. If you're returning to exercise and you're starting to have some of these symptoms that are listed on the bottom of the screen, so heaviness, dragging, any leakage of urine with running or jumping or whatever the exercise is, those are signs that you're probably doing something that is a little bit too high impact or loading your body in a way that your body tissues are not quite ready for. So it also can just be an indication to go check in with a therapist to get a sense of where you're at and what we can do to kind of strengthen you a little bit more. You know, maybe won't have increase in foot size in pregnancy. But, you know, if you're getting back to running or something postpartum, it's really worth making sure that your feet still fit in your shoes because a lot of times they grow. And then breastfeeding, there's definitely, when you're exercising to like a moderate to intense level, no evidence to say that your supply is gonna dip, but everything that you're putting out and your metabolism is all regulated by what you're putting in and how much you're sleeping, and that can all be really impacted in that postpartum period. And I think that there's also just a lot of pressure for women to bounce back quickly. And so that can be something driving early exercise or eating habits in an already challenging time. So just kind of checking in with your body, I guess, and making sure that you're supporting yourself as you anticipate returning to exercise. Do you want me to take this one? I don't know if this was me or you.
I don't either. You want me to just do it? Go ahead. You're on a roll.
Okay.
You're on a roll.
So yeah, with the first one, definitely if you are leaking urine during an exercise that you've started, that's indicating that your body needs a little more support. And often when I see people postpartum for the pelvic floor, there might be weakness, but you're usually in a very tight, contracted state through those muscles, because when a muscle gets injured, it wants to brace. And so it often is living in a muscle spasm. So it seems counterintuitive, but usually what I'm doing with women for those first few weeks of postpartum physical therapy is working to release and relax their muscles. Because again, that you just went through a pretty big injury. In those first 6 weeks though, you likely will have some, well, not always, but often people will have urinary leakage because there has been some trauma to the urethra and all the more static stabilizers. So in that early period, before you get back to exercise, having some leakage is kind of considered like kind of within the norm. It shouldn't last longer than that 6 weeks, and it shouldn't come with exercise. If it does, and it's always worthwhile seeing a therapist, and like Anne mentioned, we don't have doctors that won't refer to us because it's just such a great way to support all of our patients, and we all want the best outcomes for our patients. And yeah, I think that's mostly what I want to say on that page.
Okay, so that's really what we have there on this last page. That's our both of us our addresses where we practice. So neither of them I know are right in Northbrook where you guys are, but neither of them are particularly far. And there are other therapists within the system as well. I did want to take some time to take you through some exercises, but before we do that, if you guys want to unmute yourselves, are there any questions that you have?
I don't know. I'm interested to see the exercises.
Okay.
Nope, no questions. Just interested in seeing the exercises as well.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, feel free to unmute yourselves if you want to. And what I'll do is I'll just show you some things. And then Annie, if you want to, pipe up and say anything, I'll just take you through some things that we very frequently do. So, obviously not having had the opportunity to see you in person, we don't know exactly, how your body is progressing and what it looks like and things like that. So these are just generally helpful based on common changes during pregnancy. So we talked about some of the postural changes. So it's easy to just start with standing, and I've got my Pilates reformer set up here. So I'm just going to use some of this so that you can see me better. But we'll actually start with, I'm going to show you like just a simple calf stretch, which you probably have done before, where if you're here, you've got one leg forward, one leg back, and you're just going to gently lunge forward to put your weight onto your forward leg so that you're stretching that back leg. Now, because of the lax ligaments, sometimes your feet may be a little more loose. So some pregnant women find it more comfortable to do it in shoes or with a little towel under the ball of their foot. It's not necessary, but if it feels better, that's a nice way to do it. And you can do both sides. That works nicely. We definitely don't encourage wearing high heels during pregnancy because your calves tend to be tight anyway. So, if you have one special occasion, that would be one thing, but we don't advise doing it a lot for a long period of time. So that's the calf stretch. And then I'm going to show you a few things on hands and knees, which, if you want to just watch me, of course, that's fine. If you want to do it at the same time and see how it feels, that's fine. So I'm just going to go up onto my hands and knees on here so that you can see me. And if you've done exercises like this before, you probably have heard people say, flat hands is fine. If you're having any wrist discomfort in the way that we talked about earlier, if you want to make a fist and do it that way, or, hold a pillow, or for me, I can hold the edges of the reformer if I want to do it that way. And often it just feels so nice to get that low back moving. So it's just kind of dropping down into, I'll call it like the rooster tail position. So it's as if you have a tail here, and sometimes people will call it like a cow position. Sometimes that feels great so that your baby is just kind of dropping down. Some people find that not comfortable, and that's okay. You don't need to push into that. So then the other is just doing a nice, slow, easy round up and getting a bit of a reversal of that additional low back curve that tends to become larger as pregnancy progresses. So you can do forward and back, kind of cat cow, we might call it. Then from there, you can just do a very gentle, tolerable pulling of baby up towards the ceiling without overly contracting your pelvic floor. So you're just very gently tightening just to keep this whole thing engaged. Then you slide one leg forward and one leg back, then you go ahead and lift. Now, some people only find it comfortable to do one arm and the other arm. If you are having that SI joint discomfort that I mentioned, we don't really recommend being on one leg. So at that point, you might just do the arm. And often it is surprising to people that they can actually feel like they have to engage their core musculature there to keep that solid. So those are just a few hands and knees type things. Then I'm going to lie on my side. We like side lying for a lot of these exercises, and it's usually very comfortable. When we get toward the end of a pregnancy, you do see the vast majority of women actually develop a little bit of a waddle. We'll call it kind of more of a side to side gait pattern. The stronger you can keep your hip muscles, the less quickly that will develop. It will also help your balance and make you feel more stable overall. So from here, we just do some very simple, we call it a clam exercise, where your feet stay stacked up on top of one another. My head is supported either by a pillow or by my arm. And I'm just lifting my top knee and then lowering it back down. It's not about how far I'm going. It's really just about gentle control and just keeping this it has to engage, not with a lot of effort and tightening, but it's just naturally engaging in order to keep there from being a lot of excess motion there. So we call that the clam exercise. How you guys, any questions or anything? Can you see me okay? We're good?
No questions. We can see you okay. Yep.
Okay. Okay. All right. So then if you were doing it with me, I would have you do it on your other side as well. So then another really simple thing that I like to have people do both prenatal and postpartum is to work those upper back muscles. So there are a number of different ways to do that. One is just as simple as when you're sitting, in sitting, trying not to let yourself, and this goes back to that photo of the red side and the green side, having the woman not allow herself to go down to her baby, but to just keep that nice tall stance. So if we can do that from there, then another is just sitting here, and we'll often have people do palms up towards the ceiling. And this is almost anywhere you can do this. You don't have to be standing. You can be sitting very easily or standing, and your palms are up, and you're just going to bring your arms out toward the side with your palms parallel to the ceiling, so that you're just lightly engaging those upper back muscles to just give a little breath across your collarbone in the front. Just a really nice thing to do. I will often have people do that with a light band in their hands if you have access to that. A nice exercise to do. You can also, if you have access to a band, you can pull straight back and engage your upper back muscles that way. And I'll even have people do it in kneeling. So if you feel comfortable in kneeling, again, it's a nice place to think about where's your pelvis in space. So if we're having a tendency to drop into that excessive low back arching posture, sometimes going into a tall kneeling position will help you to feel it. So if you can just open up your hips a bit, keep your pelvis long, and then from there, doing some motions here, or grabbing a band that's in a door, bringing it back, those types of things. And all that upper back engagement for postural reasons. So that's just a really quick, we could take you through more. Is there something that you would like to add, Annie, that I just threw a few together?
I think that is so great. One thing that I just was thinking about when you were talking about strengthening the back body is stretching the front body. And so I don't have the best setup to show you this. I'll try to angle it towards my door, but this could feel really good right now too. To do like a Y stretch in the door. I hope you can see me. I know it's not perfect.
No, we can see.
Come
Yep.
up. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They can be high, they can be above your head, and you kind of start to lean into your front leg. You can have like a stride stance. You can vary the height of your arms and notice how that changes the stretch that you're getting across, that breast tissue, across the front of your armpits. Because when we think about what gets you stuck in that position, it's weakness, and then it's also just like tightness if you're not stretching. So making sure that you're, however you can, opening up the front of the body. Mary Ellen, did you say you had a question?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This has been really helpful though. Thank you.
Oh, good. Have either of you ever used those big yoga balls or stability balls, they're called?
I definitely know what they are. I don't have one at home though to use.
So
Yes,
I have one here.
Recently bought one.
Yeah, well, it's not unusual for birthing centers to have them available to sit on. They just feel kind of nice during as you're in the early stages of labor. It just feels good. I'll show you something on mine, but another thing that you can do when you're in that stage where we don't really advocate spending a lot of time on your back. Sometimes if you want to be on your back, but you don't want to be all the way down. I'm going to turn this just a bit so you can see me better. If you have something curved like this, and it doesn't have to be this exact piece, it could just be something sort of like this. And you can take your back up against it and just be lying, but not have to be all the way flat. And from there, you can add some of those other things. This kind of thing, the upper back work, as well as just opening up in your chest, which is just another variation of what Annie was doing in the door. There are things to be done there, but that's kind of a nice thing that I will sometimes do when I'm working with pregnant women. I'm going to just grab that ball real quick.
The ball is also great to put under your chest if you got into like a hands and knees position to support your upper body if you're dealing with some wrist fatigue, or even just like want to have a little bit of a passive way to offset the weight of that baby. Yeah, exactly. And obviously you make, a little more space. And then tilts like she was doing, and she'll probably show you.
What was I going to show you again? I forgot.
No, you can do anything with the ball, which is why it's so amazing. But just like pelvic mobility, proprioception, sitting on it, doing circles, all of those things are.
Okay, now I'm going to be headless, but you can still see me better. So how's that? Can you see me okay?
Yeah.
Great. So it's what Annie was saying is pelvic mobility. So just trying to get a little motion here. Kind of tucking your tail under a bit and then just allowing it to release, which is very similar to what we were doing on hands and knees, the cat cow, but it's the cat cow in a seated position. It's also a nice place. And Annie, let me know if you don't agree with this. I have said to people that it's a place that you can actually feel the floor of your pelvis. So if you haven't really spent much time thinking about that area of your body in your life, sometimes if you get the floor of your pelvis on the ball, you become a little more aware of it and your ability to relax it and then tighten it. So as Annie was saying before, we advocate doing that in coordination with your breath. So as you exhale, you would be allowed to gently draw those muscles up, but then as you inhale, it should descend. You shouldn't be holding it up tight on the ball while you're doing that. Yes,
Yeah.
the ball. Go ahead, Annie.
I totally agree with that. And one thing that might get a little bit more specific than anybody wants to hear right now, but just to add to that is as you get towards 35 weeks and you're progressing in your pregnancy, we do want you to feel that you can bulge that perineal region with some abdominal effort down into the ball. So you start to practice some gentle bearing down and feel that your pelvic floor can accept that pressure. And you feel that your kind of like perineal region, the pelvic floor, that vaginal area, as you exhale at that point in pregnancy, instead of contracting, you're starting to practice your pushing methods and how that coordinates with the voluntary relaxation of your pelvic floor. So like right now, getting pelvic mobility and finding those muscles and making sure you have that contraction and they're strong and they have good circulation is great. And then when you get to those later stages, we kind of start to reverse it a little bit and we exhale with a little downward pressure. So
do you at all advocate, I have heard it said, but I'm curious what the more current thinking is in your training in pelvic floor. I've heard it said that they would recommend actually spending a little time in the last few weeks actually going into a squatting position to get your body adjusted to that.
Yeah. I mean, squatting, I think, is awesome through pregnancy. If your body can tolerate it, if your hips can tolerate it, squatting, like any kind of supported, even like sitting, on like a yoga block in that squatted position, child's pose, maybe not happy baby because you're not on your back, but all of those do facilitate good length for the pelvic floor. they can help you feel maybe a little bit more awareness through that region. The only thing I'd be cautious about with like spending too much time in squatting is just letting that kind of too much descent through the perineal region, or kind of like that blood pooling kind of idea. But you know, preparing for your pelvic floor for labor and delivery and your pelvis for labor and delivery, really just like keeping things mobile, you know, keeping it moving. That's going to help your pelvis move symmetrically as baby descends through that outlet.
Yeah. Well, I think that concludes our presentation. I don't know if you guys have anything else that you'd like to ask questions. We have a couple more minutes.
I don't. I thought it was really helpful though, and I've learned a lot. So thank you so much for putting it on.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, I have no questions, but thank you. I thought this was very, very helpful to learn some new things I haven't heard or thought about yet. So thank you.
Well, yeah, of course. And you guys, good luck to you. Feel free, reach out to us if you ever have any questions or anything.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, Heidi, for putting this together, and thanks for, yeah, best wishes with everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you ladies for joining us. I hope you have found this pleasant. A special thank you to Ann and Annie for your time and effort putting together today's presentation. You know, the YMCA education series is free and open to the public, but as a nonprofit organization, we are always happy to receive donations from you. If you enjoyed today's program and would like to support adult programming at the North Suburban YMCA, please feel free to make a donation to our Y, either by going to our website or by going to our website at nsymca.org. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a nice
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. We did it, Annie.
Yay.
Nice job, ladies. Thank you.
Annie, you were awesome.
You were too. That was great.
You were awesome.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.